Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Erger.
Here.
Members are present.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll approve by acclamation. Open it up for citizen comment. Seeing none. Report of the committee chair. I have nothing. Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
Alderman Gould. No report. Alderman Erger. No report. All right, we're rolling right along. City administrator report.
Thank you, Alderman Weggie. At your email this morning, it prompted me to contact the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and immediately responded. Our contact at the agency said, and I will read, yes, I can share that the penalty for this matter, so this is on the styrofoam matter, I can share that the penalty for this matter has been assessed at $4,000 to resolve the matter. This penalty amount was adjusted, it was reduced to take into account the city's actions against the contractor and the corrective action taken in cleanup efforts. The agreement, which is the consent order that the city will have to adopt and sign, will include the penalty only since all corrective actions have been taken. Of course, this has not been finalized. It's still under review and the approval process, so she will not be providing us a final update until sometime next week.
Okay.
Update.
And then will we turn around and hand that to the contractor?
It's a matter for discussion.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, at least we're nearing the end of that. Thank you for that update. Is that it?
Yes, that
Okay.
is it.
Great. We'll go on the department reports. Public Works, Dan.
Okay, we have a few project updates here. So Russell Avenue, the GRG Connector Part B, we had a pre-construction meeting with several folks on December 11th, which was this week. We did the notice to proceed to Gershenson. They actually mobilized Wednesday, and they're going to be working on the sidewalk along Russell. Included in your packet is a letter, so they didn't have to, but we actually did. Public Works notified the folks on that northern edge as well as the businesses at Brentwood Boulevard. So haven't heard back from anybody, so I'm assuming that they're okay with what's going on. That work will go on for the next few months with the sidewalk, and then of course you've got the work over on the east side of Brentwood Boulevard with the bridge, and then the railroad and all that good stuff. So it's going to take months to complete that project. Manchester Road, I know that the paver work, it's been going on for at least 5 or 6 weeks. They were supposed to be out there this week. I did see a truck and the bricks, but I didn't see any workers yesterday, and I don't know if there was anybody today. I didn't drive through there. But tentatively, it was supposed to be this week to finish up. They only need like 2 to 3 days of good weather to finish it, and for whatever reason, it's not KCI, it's KCI subcontractor, but they're still responsible for them. So whenever Shrimp actually comes out there, they'll do the paver work, and hopefully we can get that reopened and done. And then the only other thing with Manchester Road I didn't put down was pretty soon I'm going to be meeting with, well, actually I have a meeting with MoDOT tomorrow to talk about the rapid flash beacons on those mid-block crossings. You know, they should be arriving any day this week. It's what the last forecast was. Litzinger Road bike signs, we started putting those up today on the south side. On the north side, whenever we remove the garland, you know, that holiday garland we put up, we've got brackets already in the shop. We'll start mounting those signs on those electric streetlight posts. Rather than keep cramming more posts in that corridor, we thought it would look cleaner if we put the signs on the streetlights. And then we can still put garland around it, you know, but since we're going to be out there removing the garland, we'll put the brackets up in the next few weeks. But the south side that doesn't require streetlight mounting is already in progress. St. Louis County road resurfacing project. There was a virtual meeting yesterday. Staff also had a meeting with them on December 11th. So that's that resurfacing, ADA sidewalks, all that good stuff between Bruno and Dale. So that project is still, I looked up at the website today. It's still project construction's targeted early 2027. So the design phase is going on now. Right-of-way design will begin in 2024. And then right-of-way acquisition, they think would take place from 2025 through 2026. So that's why it puts construction so far out into early 2027. One thing from the meeting was it's going to be challenging to create a wide enough sidewalk on the Brentwood side by Home Depot. There's landscaping there. If they widen any further, they're going to impact those trees. So they're trying to figure out design-wise what they can do to leave some. I know that they can't just eliminate parking spaces. I know Whitney mentioned it to them about the conditional use and number of stalls and all that stuff. So that'll be interesting when they come back and have some better idea of what they can do there. And then lastly, street sweeping. We borrowed a machine from Maplewood. We used that over the last 2 weeks. We returned it today. I think everything looks pretty good, using their Elgin machine. And then we'll either borrow or rent something in 2024 since we still don't have a machine. So that's it.
Any questions for, yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, two things. One, the street sweeper went by today and noticed it's got a very different pitch to it as it goes by. So I was like, oh, what is that? And noticed they were going by. It was nice. It was good to see clean street. Two, on the tunnel, I am receiving quite a few complaints from residents that why is it taking so long? When you first explained why we had to shut it down, they understood. They felt like it was okay, should have been done right the first time, but they're fixing it. Now it's just become this, well, they're taking advantage of us because it's a small job or something like that. So people are complaining that they can't use the tunnel that they've for so long. So I'd say let's just keep the pressure on it, and you can't complain. You can't say that it's because of bad weather. We've had phenomenal weather, so it needs to be wrapped up.
I would agree. I reached out to KCI either this week or last week. Earlier this week, actually it was end of last week. They responded on Saturday. We responded back on Monday, and very similar to the message you said. It's like, look, we were told we had a rush to close this so you could get them done, and it's really their subcontractor Shrimp who is doing all the paving work. And what we were told is that they have no control over Shrimp. They are handling projects that they're being charged LDs for, liquidated damages. They were out yesterday and are supposed to be back out tomorrow and all next week. So they thought plus or minus 3 days. So my hope is that it's done early next week. I said the same thing. It's like, if it takes liquidated damages, then KCI and MoDOT, why don't you guys threaten them with liquidated damages for not getting this done? So they agreed. They said they're equally as frustrated as we are. And I hope that we'll see them finishing up soon.
Okay.
I did not go out today, so I don't know what they got done yesterday, to be honest.
Not much. I think the pile of bricks and the water bottle has been sitting there for a little bit of more than a week. So it's quite frustrating.
As for me too.
Else, Nancy?
Oh, I just want to echo that how nice the streets look with the street sweeper that came through, and I've gotten some positive comments when I'm out with my dogs. So thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dan. Parks and Rec, Derek? Yeah.
Go from one park frustration to another and talk about geese. As you guys helped approved using the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service Wildlife Services. Still the longest name ever. They've been out to the park 20 times since October. They've dispersed over 250 geese. What I like is that they're using green lasers, and when I asked, like, hey, how are you doing? It's like, oh, it's these green lasers. You can't get our model in America anymore. In fact, they won't ship them overseas. So I'm not sure what they're using, but it's quite interesting. But one of the things I did say is that they've been great on cloudy days and great at night, but they're not quite as effective during the day. So they'd like to use a different deterrent, and the deterrent is basically what they're calling a pyrotechnic. It is basically a cap from a starter pistol. They have two deterrents. One sounds it's a little bit less loud, sounds like a bottle rocket, little squealing sound. The second is louder and sounds more like a gunshot. We said, hey, I'm not going to approve that one. Let's see if I can get this other one done. They'll keep coming out and dispersing them other ways. They just think the pyrotechnic would be the best way. It's what they use at Lambert. But that is something that we thought, obviously, you guys would probably want to discuss.
Comments? We're shooting bottle rockets at geese now.
They're not, we're not shooting them. It's just a cap. It just sounds like a bottle rocket.
Right.
Eric, can you explain what the other steps are, the final steps, if this doesn't work? It gets worse.
Well, I mean, ultimately, so we're in migration time, and so they're really focusing on trying to make sure birds don't stop and whatnot. As we get into spring, we'll start working on nesting. And so if any geese nest, there's multiple things you do. You can oil the eggs so they don't hatch. You can also steal the eggs and replace them with wood eggs. And then ultimately, if you can't do anything, then you can work with USDA and start rounding up the geese and taking them to food processing for homeless shelters. So we're trying to do all the other things first. And this is, lots of things that can be done, but this is what they think would be the next best step. They're not saying that what they're doing is ineffective. They're just saying during the daytime, this would be more effective.
I would say if we do this, we probably need a communications to go out of why you're going to hear what sounds like bottle rockets down in the park.
Yes, we were talking about that. We've already kind of mentioned it to Michelle, but obviously we're not going to go forward until we get approval. If we get approval.
Yeah, Nancy?
So how loud are the bottle rockets? Is it like is it actually like a firework? And, are we going to be scaring more than just geese, like people's dogs at home and or people who have PTSD and their other...
They shouldn't. I mean, they basically said it's not as loud as a regular firework or a bottle rocket, but they are sensitive to the fact that everyone's tolerance are different. So that's why they won't just go out and do it. That's why they're asking for us, for our opinion. They also think that, they're really talking, most of the geese they're seeing are either the lake or then further down the creek. So you're not talking basically the vent lawn right next to homes, which is why they think it's not as a bad idea either. Yeah, I know plenty of dogs who get stressed after a very small noise, so I can't promise that no one will get stressed if we do this. But
And is it like do they just do it once and then they're done, or is it just a repetitive thing until the geese who were there leave? Like, how long does this go on?
yeah, it's usually,
know?
it's pretty brief, they said, because the idea is that this scares the geese enough is once they do it, then they take off right away. And that's very similar to what they're doing even with the laser. So they're out there, but they're only out there a short amount of time, because once you get out there and you deter them, they take off pretty quickly. So they don't think that they're going to be out there shooting 30 rounds of these things. They think it's one or two, and then they take off.
Obviously I prefer that over starter gun, kind of gunshot. Is it possible that they can give us a demonstration of this at all before we approve having it? Because I just don't know what to expect. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, let's do this, when I don't know how loud it is and whether or not it would start to cause anxiety in either other animals or people or anything like that.
I can ask. I mean, then it's just making sure we find a day where we can all get together and do it. So
I mean, I don't know if that's not in here, not inside.
Be rid of us?
But if we were to meet if we had this committee or whatever at the park and just demonstrate like what it sounds like, what's the process, I think it might make me feel more comfortable recommending something if that's what we want to do, or say no, that's going a little farther than we need to go.
And I'll be honest, the person I talked to, he's cognizant of the fact that not everyone likes this, which is why he's asking for approval.
Yeah, I understand.
Permission. So
I think it's great.
I think he'd be happy to meet us if that's what we want to do.
And are we still, we are seeing an impact. They're not as prevalent, right? Are we, and part of the reason we needed to do this was to manage the landscaping and make sure that they don't rip up, you know, the native plants that we put in and all of that.
Geese aren't the greatest animals in the world. Not in landscaping term, that we consider them invasive. And so the idea is that we don't want them to get comfortable within the new park. To be honest, early in October, we saw a reduction of them throughout the park. They not only do they scatter them, but they actually track a geese scat. They go up and down the trails looking for geese scat. I've gotten a report on that too. I just feel like you didn't
Yeah, we
really
don't
need
have
that one.
Too much information.
And so we did see a reduction in what they're doing until migration season. So we're getting a lot of birds come in. It's a little bit later this year because they said of the weather, it's a little bit warmer. And then the whole idea is really to keep them out so they don't think that it's a place where they can nest. Now, I will assume that we probably had some nests last spring and they'll be back. It's what geese do. And so that's what they'll be looking for is nests of people who come back. Geese had been here last year and then deter them from coming back in the future.
Well, and that might be coincidental, but we did shut down the tunnel on October 31st or 30th or whatever, and so people haven't probably been using the park as much. I'm sure having people using the park kind of also disperses geese a little bit, but maybe not. Maybe geese don't care. Of course, they are down in the traffic in our fountain down there, so.
I think the coyotes do a better job of scaring them than the joggers.
They're not doing a good enough job.
No.
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, so the recommendation is for a demo, live fire test down in Brentwood Park. Let's see what this is like, if possible.
Yeah. Do you guys want to try to get a time or two that I can then?
Let's see if they're willing to do it, I guess, and then offer up some time.
I assume Public Works Committee will be allowed to fire the gun as well.
That I don't know. I can't speak for the USDA.
Okay. Never a dull moment in Public Works, that's for sure. Everybody okay with that? Do we need a vote or anything?
So the second thing is just a quick forestry update. We are done planting the trees for this season. We planted 76 trees. The good thing is hopefully you'll start seeing an increase to the urban forest, mainly because we're not removing as many trees. We've gone through the Emerald Ash Borer plan, and so now we do have a number of trees that we removed because of storms and things like that. But I think we lost 25 to 30 trees, so 40 trees are new trees, and that's what we're hoping to do until we get all of our available sites planted. So that's exciting over the next few years. And then the other thing is we hired a new urban forester, Doug Seeley. He starts on December 18th. And we feel very fortunate to have him. If you saw his resume or what I put down, he worked at the Director of Forestry and Community Conservation Beyond Housing. It was basically really that in that position, he served 24 communities in North County, helping them with their forestry needs. He's also ISA certified, which is a requirement, but he also has his tree risk assessment qualification, his track qualification, which all of our arborists do here, but it's a pretty high level certification. So we're excited to have him on staff, and he starts Monday. And then we continue with the Memorial Park Bridge project. So the bridges have been removed and the foundation's been removed, and they're working on getting the concrete footers and abutment walls and all that stuff together. Bridges should be coming in late February, early March. The idea is to get everything prepared so they just come in on the trailer, pick them up on the crane, drop them, secure them, and then they're out pretty quickly after that. So done, like I said, in March.
Great. Any questions for Eric? Okay, thank you. Planning and development?
Planning and Zoning Commission meeting was last night. They approved the conditional use permit for La Arch, which included the group home and the adult daycare services. So that will be a public hearing at the Board of Aldermen on January 2nd. Board docs are the November monthly monthly reports for the building division. There was 153 permits issued, 631 inspections completed, and 21 code enforcement cases for November. We are working on, MyGov has the list of all the different permits. There's about 42 of them. So we're working on narrowing those down and providing more clarity of which permits is for what. So that will be in January, we look to go that route. And then we're also looking at opening up more times for inspectors and inspections.
All right, any questions for Whitney? Yeah.
Opening up more times for inspections, how are they running now?
So right now, well, generally, if someone calls and say, hey, can you come, we'll go. But now through MyGov, it's generally scheduled at between 9 and 2:30, so we're looking at 8:30 to 3:30. Generally speaking, the prior senior inspector would block off the early morning to do permit review. Now we are have assistance with that, so we can open up more time for inspections. So.
Okay, and then, I know with the new budget that was approved, we have a part-time permit helper customer service person coming, right? Is the plan to start posting that?
In fact, I talked with Tangela Bell, the HR manager, today to get with Whitney so we can start the recruitment effort now.
Okay, wonderful.
And I will say I've reached out to, I'm like, hey, if anyone knows someone wants a part-time job.
Yeah.
So.
One suggestion I have on that is, one thing I like about Webster is they have a phone number that goes directly to that customer service person. You can leave a voicemail directly, so as opposed to calling the generic 1-800-Brentwood number and then, 1 and 2. I don't know if our IT can support that, but that might be a
Direct
suggestion.
dial. I'm sure they can.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Whitney. Having Wi-Fi problems, so I'm a little slow. I'm just on my phone here. Yeah, Suscom.
So Sustainability Commission, a couple quick things here is the first is that the commission has set their 2024 priorities. And so basically what we did was we looked at our sustainability plan, all the short-term actions, and then kind of ranked them as a commission. And the ones that received the highest votes basically became the priorities. And then we created a workflow sheet more than anything else, was who's responsible, staff, within the department or within the city, and even the Suscom members who might be interested, and then really kind of set the plan for the year. So the first thing I think we're going to tackle is the website. And so we'll be working with our new communications manager on that. And although she doesn't know it yet, she'll be coming to the meeting in January. I have to remind her of that. So we'll be, that's kind of the first thing I'm moving on. But there's other things that we're working on concurrently. So that's the first part. And then the solar rebate program, we did discuss starting a solar rebate program, which is similar to what the City of Webster Groves is doing. Basically, the City of Webster Groves is a $500 rebate for any new panel installation of over $2,500. It's a way to encourage people to get into the solar realm. One of the things that the Sustainability Commission asked was whether or not that is legal. Is that something the city could do? And so we did ask the city attorney the next week, and basically he just said since this program serves a public purpose, it's okay for the city to do. So it's helping the energy grid, it's helping with things like that. So he does not have an issue with this type of program. We did meet with the REST program at WashU, and they have a lot of different suggestions, and one is how the city can get involved with a national program. And one of the things is, does this fit into that program? And I think they're looking into that question, and they're going to provide their final report soon. It was interesting. It was a great day. We went out there, all the students kind of presented. They focused on solar. The only bad part is they did say the best bang for our buck would be putting on the Public Works building. So that's unfortunate. But beyond that, a lot of good recommendations and some good work. And while we might not use everything from the program, there are definitely some good things that the city can work on.
Yeah, I'll second that. There were a lot of good suggestions. I mean, just about permitting, and there's some, software that is, free and available that goes through the whole permitting to make it easy and remove barriers, and some things we can put on the website and just, encourage people to, if they are going solar, how they can do it and make it easier for them. So I think we'll see some stuff come out of Suscom on that. Good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see Whitney coming.
Earlier in the year, the Architectural Review Board did approve a resolution for staff approval of solar panels on roofs, provided that the connectors are dark or bronze to match the roof. They're not the raw metal. Or if it's a flat roof, it's screened from view. So we've been approving solar panels on roof under that guidance. Yeah.
Well, just I'll echo for your residents, having gone through this, there was someone on the ARB and that was his thing, like, they need to be black brackets, and so if the staff is requiring it, they're saved a step, and they don't have to go through ARB. So it's just black brackets blend in, so yeah.
Good.
That was an issue when we went through it too.
Awesome. And one more question for Eric on Suscom. Are we going to be seeing NOMO April stuff coming through in the next month or two to get ready for April?
Yeah, I know Whitney and I were talking about that this week, and so between the two of us, we should be bringing something.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Eric on Suscom? All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda, I believe.
Second.
Conversation. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, we'll move into old business. Madden Fest.
So we broached the subject last month of, is there anything that the city and staff should be considering on changes to operations and Brentwood Days? We threw out a lot of ideas. I know you guys wanted to kind of think about them for a little bit. Some of the recaps of, do we charge for carnival rides? Do we make carnival rides free for residents and charge for non-residents? Do we do something like add additional carnival rides? If we do that, then we might need to expand the spot or expand, the fairground, which means what do we do with fireworks? Do we move fireworks to Brentwood Park and do them over the lake and have kind of the finale of the event over in Brentwood Park and have the main event over there? Do we do drones? Drones have a smaller footprint. They do cost more. And then, we talked about maybe doing something different for that vendor craft booth or doing something more adult-centric. Well, loves my crazy ideas. I was out shopping last night, and we saw it's kind of like beer pong, but with Battleship. So we can do that as one of the games, and it'd be a great time for all. So those are, as we need, the biggest thing is we need to put out our RFQ for RFP for both the carnival rides and fireworks. If we go to the drones for the drones, we just need to get moving on that so we have vendors for next year. And if we're going to change anything, now's the time to make that change with those vendors.
All right, I think Eric's looking for some feedback.
Well, I brought this up at our ward meeting, but we didn't have the right crowd to respond to the Brentwood Days issue. So I don't have a lot of resident support. I will say on the drones, I didn't look at all of these, but I looked at 150 drones and a 600 drone, and there's a big difference in the quality of the shows. So I would certainly be supportive of moving to drones because I think I've seen a couple and they're really cool and different, but the expense may be prohibitive. And I think we've got to figure out something to do to, whether it's charging everyone or charging non-residents, but it just, when residents are out saying that they would rather pay for their own child to ride a ride so they don't have to wait in line for so long, that to me seems like a different trigger, and maybe we do need to come up with something to make it, that's just people don't have to stand in line for so long. But I don't have a lot of great options.
I just had a question about the drone shows. Is there any audio that comes with those?
Yeah, they can do audio with them. And it'd be much what we do for fireworks. We tap it into the band, whatever band's playing. If we went over and did something in the other park, we'd have to kind of set that up, but I think we'd have the ability to do that as well.
Yeah, I just asked because part of fireworks for me is the sensory, the hearing them. So if that's not included in the drones, I think we stay away from those. But that's all I had.
So we did have a pretty good audience at our ward meeting, and some that were pretty vocal about it after Brentwood Days. So, and in general, they were happy to see staff looking into all of these things. I was surprised. I thought the drone show was going to be met with "don't take away my fireworks" type of thing. But honestly, a lot of people were really quite excited. And that was, we didn't even have the cool references that you had in the board docs tonight. But there was a lot of folks that were very open to the idea of moving to a drone show, especially if it allowed for, they understood that it would then allow maybe some more space to expand the rides, create, they did like the idea, they brought up the idea of if we did expand rides, maybe it's expanding and having more inflatables for kids so that there's sort of a, like our park is, right? You've got, our playground is gonna be, there's gonna be kind of a kids area and then an older kids area, you know? So they all liked the idea of more rides or more space for activities. They were open to the drone show. We didn't really, I didn't have much information on what it would really take to do fireworks at the new park. But some of them said, you know, well, if you could still see the fireworks from the new park and all that, maybe that's an option. But a lot of them said that they thought the drone show is interesting because, you know, it doesn't make as much noise and it's not as disturbing to people and pets, and you know, you don't have all the smoke that's everywhere filling the sky. I thought it would be interesting with that because you could create a theme every year and then tell the drone show could sort of culminate that theme as just depicting it better than you can do with fireworks. So I think the consensus that we received was that's an interesting prospect. I agree with Alderwoman Tice that maybe it's cost prohibitive, but maybe as we continue to evolve this, that's a goal that we move towards. So they were all willing to pay some money if it meant more rides and less lines. They also like the idea of residents being allowed, and even alumni being, you know, coming back, allowed to ride rides for free and then charging, but they understand the complexities of how do you actually fulfill that. So I don't know if this helps give you direction, but, you know, I think we're on the right track. Some of your adult activities, some were like, okay, that sounds cool, but what kind of liability we're going to have? We've got people drinking and adults drinking and throwing axes and stuff. I said, well, we'll let Eric figure that out.
Yeah, the liability would be on the vendor, which is great.
Yes.
And they do successfully in multiple bars across the area, so I think they've got it figured out. As far as the idea of things we could do and things we can't do, I mean, if the idea is we want to try the drones, we could just do an RFP for 1 year and then come back and say, hey, did we like it? Do we want to go back to fireworks? And then we're not settled in. I think the cost of a drone show is going to be pretty consistent no matter what. One of the things I like is one of the shows or one of the scenes you can do is a logo of a sponsor, and so we might be able to kind of push that a little bit more and say, hey, if you go to this level, you're as far as the extra rides, it's a give and take. If we charge money, then our cost for rides would go down. In fact, we probably wouldn't have any if we charged everyone. I don't know what it would be if we said we want to charge non-residents, and then it'd be basically, we'd probably have to guarantee a minimum. And if they don't hit that minimum, we'd pay the rest. But the question is, even if we have $5,000 worth of sales, that then brings down the cost of what the carnival rides are. So, I think we could do that and add additional rides. I can talk to our current vendor. The last 3 times I've done this, I've only had 1 response. And so I don't want to lose our vendor. They're
Right.
great. They're one of the better ones in the area, and want to make sure that they're okay with anything we do. But I do know that another company or another city uses them, and they don't pay a single dime because it's all done through sales. So it is a lot to take in. I think the medium run, and I don't know if Alderman Erger or Alderman Wegge have anything else to add before I go.
The only thing I just don't think it's feasible to do residents don't pay, and there are just too many, like, what if my grandkids are coming? Well, they're not residents, or, I mean, it's just too, and then like, well, you go to the rec center, do aldermen go door to door and hand them out? It's just like, I don't know, it just seems impossible. And, if we're going to keep the rides and we want to cut then I think we just charge everybody. I mean, you get a wristband for $15-20 or something, and you can ride as many as you want, and try that, right? And this is a response to the long lines, and if people complain about that next year, then we'll keep iterating on this forever. Any thoughts, Alden? Okay.
Motion of any sort? I guess I'll.
We'd start right now with getting out the RFQ. So I think the biggest one is if we want to go to a charge for carnival rides, that will change our RFQ immensely and probably the cost immensely, which would be great.
I'll make a motion that we, to direct staff to proceed with an RFQ that would include a nominal charge for all people attending that wants to ride rides.
So if I may ask the question, should this be maybe a recommendation to the board so that the rest of the
Yes,
board?
yeah,
weigh in on it?
and make,
Okay,
to make a recommendation to the board.
perfect.
Yeah.
You want to bolt on the drone thing too?
And a 1-year drone show trial.
Second.
All right, any other comments, conversation?
Get that, Kelly?
All right, we all good? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? Okay.
Great. So, and just make sure I understand, the recommendation to go out to RFQ goes to the board, and can we get it on Mondays?
Yeah, we have not posted that agenda yet.
On that right now.
Okay.
Okay, next item is demolition of 2818 Breckenridge Industrial Court. Probably Dan, right?
2818 Breckenridge Industrial, most of you know, is Bowser House. We've talked about possibly doing something at that property over the course of the past year. It flooded in July of 2022. There was quite a bit of extensive damage. You'd have to rebuild it basically if we were to try to use it. And then in light of recent conversations Eric's had with FEMA, there's really no point in keeping the building. But looking back through board docs, I never saw where we formally gave direction to staff to go out and solicit bids to do demolition because we were kind of talking about doing something different with it. So what we're looking for is a motion to go ahead, do the hazardous materials assessment, and then do the bid for the RFP package for demolition.
Is that a motion?
All right, any other comments, discussion? We have no choice, really, so.
Right.
Good call. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right.
That's it. Thanks.
All right, we're back to stormwater. Yep. Tony, welcome back.
Good to be back. So, at the last meeting, we had a the ongoing discussion here is what is the trigger for the size of the infill development, right? And so, one of the things that I was asked to do after leaving the last meeting was take a look at what was initially recommended, right? And so, Dan was kind enough to pull out that initial recommendation. I had reviewed it here. The initial recommendation was really good, in my opinion. There was a lot of information there about what the neighboring communities were doing, the size of the lots, and all kinds of other information. The initial recommendation that came out of that first look at it was that Brentwood should institute a no increase runoff for all developments, no infill area. So if you have 10 square feet or 100, the initial recommendation was that should be mitigated, right? And so through discussions and the additional costs that come with those small developments is that, okay, we need to go to 200 square feet because at that time, that is what triggered a building permit. Okay, so that's how the 200 came about. Also, the 1.14 inches, again, that's a 90% of storm, right? So it's your 2-year storm. That's where that came from. And again, that's MSD's water quality standards, right? So look, again, I think some of the items that may have been missed in the original recommendation was, is detention always required? I know a lot of some of the biggest problems was these new developments have runoff that pushes water onto the neighbors' properties, right? And so a lot of other communities within this original study was that there's no adverse effect on the neighboring property, but not necessarily detention requirements, right? So I'm not pushing water off, right? I'm not adding more water to my neighbor's property, but if you're adding impervious, it's got to go somewhere, which would mean that that impervious would come to the street, right? So I wanted to make sure that you all had an opportunity to understand what the initial recommendation was. Most of the other communities, again, it's all differential runoff for a lot of communities. Some communities said anything more than 2 cubic feet per second would require detention. 2 cubic feet per second at this design storm is like a half an acre. It's like the entire lot being covered. So that didn't really make sense to me. And a couple other communities, Kirkwood, 1.14 inches again over any impervious area. Olivet was an increase of over 1,000 square feet. Right. So again, University City, Richmond Heights, Webster Groves, Creve Coeur, Ladue, all of those, all differential runoff must be detained. Okay. So again, I think Brentwood, and so again, that was the initial recommendation, is to do the all differential runoff. Again, it was cost prohibitive for residents and new developments, and so went to that building permit, scenario. So in my opinion, I think what you're doing now is less than several communities. It's not as restrictive. It does curtail some of the runoff, and so I agree with what you're doing now, in my opinion. So you have a couple of options, in my opinion. I would say stick with what you're doing now. That would be my initial recommendation. If I am asked to look at this on an independent scale and do this study over, that's going to cost you something. And I have a sneaky suspicion here, and I'm probably going to come up with the same recommendations as the previous, because it's based in fact, right? And so the other part of that other option would be to provide a cost benefit analysis. What am I actually getting for the additional cost? So one last thought here was trying to reduce runoff, but also provide a little bit of a benefit to our citizens by trying to reduce the overall cost for these things would be to maybe standardize, right? Standardize the detention size. At over 500 square feet, it's this size. There is no calculations, right? It's this size detention. Over 1,000, it's this size. At 1,500, it's this size. And so it's very standardized, and that stormwater runoff calculation doesn't need to be evaluated. However, the bigger part, in my opinion, is whether there's an adverse effect to the property owner, and a review of the site plan still needs to happen, whether that happens in-house or through Gonzalez, which is what we do now for you.
Yeah, Jeff. I guess, and I looked at some of the, like Kirkwood, and it seemed to me that, I mean, you had insinuated that Kirkwood was anything, and it seems to me that they had any non-pervious over 1,000 square feet was what required I don't think it's any. I think they set it at 1,000. I'm looking at Webster here that says, one, any commercial exterior improvement, any new detached one or two family dwelling, and then any installation of any additional surface on a one or two family residential property where the new non-pervious surface is more than 5% of the existing lot or 400 square feet, whichever is less, with an exception of, they had some exceptions, which is what I was interested in hearing potentially, Whitney, why I think we need to have some, where we're not automatically saying you've got to spend $3,000 on an engineering study before you even come to us, because they even have it in theirs that says an exception where it can be demonstrated that 100% of the differential water is being managed basically by staff who could look at it and say, okay, yeah, you're demonstrating that this is, you're not going to be required to have a full engineering study done. I've had a resident who said, look, this was a challenge. I ended up having to spend several $1,000s to have this done, and it resulted in I needed to dig a ditch. It's not going to cost me that much to dig this ditch, but it cost me $3,000 to have an engineering study tell me I needed to dig a ditch for a small addition. We can't help that person who's already had to incur that expense. That was something that they said it was kind of a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah,
so I think somewhere in this legislation, somewhere in this ordinance, I think we should have. I don't mind when that's why I was asking originally a percentage, right? If I've got a 2,000 square foot lot and I cover it with 10%, well, that's going to cause a lot of runoff. If I've got a 6,000 square foot lot and I cover it with meaning if I put 200 square foot or more on it, on a $200,000, then it's going to cause. But if I got a 6,000 square foot or more area and I put a 200 square foot, it's not going to cause much, onto my neighbors, especially if it's within a setback and we follow the guidelines of what you've put in some of the other things where it's downspouts have to be a certain setback from property lines, et cetera. So the culmination of several of these things, I think, can be demonstrated that certain projects would be exceptions. And I'm just wondering how we get that specificity that we have in some, we see in some others like Webster and Kirkwood into this, so it's not just this, well, 200 square feet, doesn't matter, trigger. And that's where it comes down to it.
Yes, I just want to address, you mentioned that some of the all differential runoff part. I was reviewing the previous study, and that's what that's what
Oh,
it's,
okay.
that's what
I
the
looked
previous
at the
study
code.
said, and it was done 4 years ago. So I take your word for it, 100% that things have might not have been fully displayed here. So I appreciate that. But I agree. I think what we're talking about is again, the biggest concern here is that affecting the residents, right? Or affecting your neighbors. And so again, I think really, being able to standardize, if you're going to put in, so as far as the percentage goes, 400 square feet is about 5% of an average Brentwood lot size, right? So, yeah, again, it's really a judgment call. It's when do you stop? Because like I said before, the the smaller you get, the more expensive it's going to be. The cost benefit is always going to be more for the smaller amount, and you're going to get no benefit, and you're going to cost a bunch, right? And so when do you stop, right? I don't know. That's really just like a judgment call, right? So, but I would say that not having to get an engineering study done by having a standardized volume. A volume's a volume.
Well, that would
Anyway,
help. I mean, that's
yeah,
where the
yeah.
significant cost comes from, all of these, engineering studies that are very complex for maybe an issue that really it's over-engineering for something that is not necessary.
Right. So I'd be happy to provide Whitney some standardized from here to here. These are the recommended storage volumes, and then anybody can calculate a volume. But again, I think the bigger thing is evaluating the site plan to ensure that there's no adverse effect on the neighboring property. Right. That still needs to happen.
And I believe you had mentioned at the last meeting that you have a list of guidelines that you could provide any one of the inspectors or to be able to go through the checklist and say, okay, I know how to evaluate this.
Absolutely. The checklist is available to everybody that puts in a permit. It's kind of like, please fill out this checklist as you submit. Do you have all of these boxes checked? So, and really, are you pushing more water off from the neighbor or not? So, I'd have to, they'd have to speak for themselves on whether or not they could evaluate those site plans, and you would need our services to continue on those or not.
Okay, so I think we're getting somewhere with this standardized volume thing. So if we could do some examples of standardized volume, but I also think that there's probably a threshold where, like, if you're putting in a new house, it shouldn't be standardized. It should be, there should be an evaluation of what's happening to that land, because our tear downs are small houses turning into huge houses, and to me, that needs its own study, because that's where I hear over and over, different streets, different neighbors, all the complaints. So I don't want to, I think standardizing it for maybe additions under 500 square feet, that there could be a list of standardized things, and I don't know if the staff feels comfortable then approving it, or, but maybe it would be less expensive to get Gonzalez to review it. I don't know, but I don't want to eliminate it for the larger houses. And I keep looking back at this, and there's a lot of really good stuff that we did a lot of good 4 years ago, but there's stuff we didn't do, like the land disturbance and the sump pump discharge. And this is really important stuff in this proposed ordinance that I would love to see us enact if we can just get past this one little hurdle.
I think the other hurdle was the cost of the review of the permit. But if staff can handle that in-house, then maybe that's not as.
Right, and so maybe the under the 500 square feet is less than $500. And then, I mean, I guess then the question is, if it costs $1,000 to evaluate 500 square feet or more, then is the city going to eat the cost, or are we going to put the cost on the people doing the improvement? And that's I mean, when we have other permits, we ask the people doing the work to pay.
If staff is comfortable doing it and the overhead, so to speak, for staff is already covered,
Right.
then we're just looking to break even. We're not, I don't think
right.
we should be looking to make the full cost.
Right.
So, and now that we are fully staffed, I think, or are we fully staffed? Just one left? 1.5, okay. And so I don't want to put Whitney and John on the spot unless you all are prepared to talk about our ability to take it on. Are you tonight? No? Okay. So maybe we bring that back at the next meeting and having talked about our ability, I mean, we would definitely need to meet with you. And what that would mean is it would save the city money because then Gonzalez isn't doing it. But when we run into items where we need to, consult with you, we still have that on-call contract, so we can. So that might be an option for consideration.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Wow. Forward progress.
All right. Yeah. So,
do.
yeah.
Just throwing this out there, is there any way that we can throw a step in the process too for an applicant or somebody looking to develop something where they can ask for a waiver of an engineering study, even if it's over 200 or 300 square feet? Because, hey, my lot is said amount of square feet. I want to ask for a waiver of this. And do we have any, I don't know if we have the expertise in-house to review that, but maybe that's a way to prevent bringing those costs on. Just throwing that out there.
Whitney, do you want to, or John, thoughts about that? Is it administrative, or do you want it to come to?
I'd be very cautious about just providing some waiver because it could be very arbitrary of who, based on what are we wavering? Like,
Yeah.
by what standard, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that ties back to, do we have that expertise to make that judgment call in-house? I don't know. Yeah.
The committee were to identify the parameters in which we could make that waiver, I think that would help this discussion go further.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're getting at is if I've got a lot that's fairly wide and deep, and I want to add a structure that's in the middle of that, set back 25 feet from the edges, and you can demonstrate the overlay and flow of the water. Like, it seems like if there's a way to look at the plans and say, yeah, this is not going to adversely impact water flow onto other neighborhoods, then that's where maybe a waiver might be appropriate and say, yeah, this is not something that's going to be a concern. But
Yeah, and your point's exactly right. Typically, you would have a vegetated filter strip of a certain distance, right? As
Right.
long as your neighbor isn't more than X feet from your property, then you can get that waiver, right?
Right. So if you can already demonstrate there's vegetative filter strips, thank you, and within a certain setback, it seems like that might, but that would have to be somebody that could look at the plans or look at the site
Maybe-
plan and say, yeah.
Maybe we can consult with Tony to help us develop those parameters and then bring that back?
Yeah, I was just about to ask. that,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Great.
Yeah, I just don't want to do something where you all get pressure from elected officials to do something. I mean, it needs to be standardized so that we can go back and say, nope, they're rules.
Okay. All right, do we have clear
Yes.
next steps on that?
Whitney, are we clear? John? Okay.
All right. Moving on to the next item, which I think is landmark trees.
Sorry. So at the last Board of Aldermen meeting and at the Sustainability Commission meeting, the topic of a tree preservation ordinance was discussed. And so the idea of tonight was, I know that Alderwoman Tice wanted us to have this discussion and kind of bring some informational items to you guys for consideration. And so that's what I tried to do. And so what I did was I found a few tree preservation ordinances. Most cities who have them basically have them for multiple reasons. Maintaining the character and benefits of the trees, help with erosion, stormwater control, tree canopy, things like that. So what I put in there was the city of Chesterfield, city of Clayton, and city of Frontenac. And really, tree preservation ordinances really talk about permitting requirements for removing a tree on private property, as well as public properties, both, not just private. Tree protection during construction, minimum tree canopy coverage, whether it's for a commercial or private lot, and then compensation for failure to meet those preservation of canopy requirements. And most of it is basically, if you can't do it, then you basically pay a fee or fine into the city's tree program so that the city can plant the trees somewhere else within the city. So that's the typical thing. This has been discussed before. The last time was in 2019. And when we started out, we kind of started the conversation, and then it became pretty obvious that a full tree preservation ordinance wasn't, the committee wasn't interested in that, so we prepared the landmark tree ordinance, and that's what I included in the packet as well. It basically would have the city designate landmark trees within the city, and then it would then the ordinance would basically prohibit the removal of landmark trees without approval from the city. No motion was made to approve that, so it failed without a motion. I also forgot about, because I couldn't find the minutes so I added it tonight, was in 2004. It looked like the city of Brentwood tried to bring a tree preservation ordinance. Obviously, we don't have one, so this must have failed as well, but we don't have the minutes from 2004 in order to kind of help out, figure out why it failed. So this is kind of, again, more for informational purposes and discussion, and I will open it up for questions and discussion.
I mean, I'll start. I was part of the 2019, and it was we talked about it a lot. It wasn't just that meeting. We talked several meetings to try and find a way. The intent was great. We just speaking for me personally, we just couldn't figure out a way to make it actually work. Right. The concern was somebody has a huge tree in their backyard. They're looking to put something on, and they're going to have to plant 50 trees in their backyard to replace that caliper, and it really got ungainly very, very quickly. And also there was a thought, at least in my mind, that, you can do things that kill a tree, pretty easily if you want to get around this. So, it just didn't seem doable. It seemed onerous and, great intent. I think if we have a path forward on anything, maybe it's a celebratory thing, if you would like to apply to have the tree in your yard made a landmark tree and you get a little plaque and we have a little party or something for you, or, make it celebratory and celebrate our trees. Maybe there's something there, but we couldn't find a path to a punitive way of, enforcing this last time we talked about it.
And that was one thing we discussed at Sustainability Commission, is that the city of Webster Groves has a program that is kind of a celebration of trees, and you basically tree of merit type program that you come in and you basically nominate a tree throughout the city. And then there's a committee that basically decides whether it should be a tree of merit. And then there's a small plaque that you put, kind of like almost like Century Homes type thing, when you see plaques for Century Homes. So that is kind of the more of the carrot than the stick route. So we discussed that at sustainability, and that's something that I think staff could put together pretty easily if that's the route we'd like to go.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I was struggling with a lot of the same things you were talking about, I like that idea. I like the carrot versus stick celebration of it. I think if you've got some nice little plaque or sign then you're going to kind of think about whether or not you want to take that tree down if it's already been recognized for something. But again, noble cause, but I don't see how we do this for private property. And then with the celebration, and something to think about, I guess, could, if it's nominated by somebody, but you'd have to obviously have the approval from the people who own the tree or own the property to accept the nomination before anything could move forward, right?
Yeah,
would
I'd have to
assume.
look into the program a little bit more. I would assume that you could deny the request, but I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
I'll add on. One thing, I was actually shocked how quickly this got on our agenda. So it was like a lot of stuff to read for
Sorry,
the
it's
meeting.
just information.
But the one thing that I noticed in the the 3 cities you picked, I feel like typically have lots that are larger than Brentwood's. So that made it a little different. And I noticed in Chesterfield, lots that are less than an acre that have been subdivided for more than 2 years are exempt from the provision. And I would imagine that most of the lots in Brentwood are, well, I know that most of the lots in Brentwood are less than an acre. Like, I really like the carrot, or, the carrot piece. And then the only other question I have is, if someone is doing construction and they are gonna keep a tree, if there's something that could note the land, the area where the roots would be, just so that it could be blocked off. But I agree with you, it's really easy to kill a tree, and in fact, we had a neighbor who killed a city tree by putting nails around the tree. And so if they don't wanna, if they wanna add on and they want the tree to go away, they'll figure out a way.
I mean, to be honest, I picked the 3 cities for a couple reasons. One was the Clayton Tree Preservation Ordinance was approved right before I left to come to Brentwood, so I was fairly, it's one I knew fairly well. It has changed a little bit in the 10 years since I've left, so it's interesting. It's kind of grown and changed a little bit. Frontenac, I think, is one of the newest ones that just passed it, so it was kind of a new example. And then Chesterfield, obviously, is just a bigger city that does that. The lot size is actually a very good question, and I could look to see smaller communities with smaller lot sizes, if they have anything. And then as far as, just because these are their tree preservation ordinances doesn't mean that we can't take pieces of it. And if we really like the tree protection aspect of it, we can include that, I'm assuming, into our ordinance, especially if we're looking at public and, not sure about the private aspect of it, but I think, a tree protection ordinance would be, I think, just a small piece we could add into it that would still help. I think anything you do to protect trees. Obviously, I'm a tree guy. I know Barry's here. Barry's a tree guy, right? We'll always look to ways to find a way to protect trees. So if even this small thing, it will still save trees.
Yeah, along the lines of the carrot versus the stick, I mean, is there any incentive for a new build if they can prove that they're, protecting some of the trees that are on the lot, existing trees? Is there any way to say, okay, your permits or fees are less, or you get some sort of, if you're proving that you're preserving trees with your new build, is there a way to reduce costs of certain things? I don't know, just something to think about.
That's something we look into, and now I know the phrase, as long as it is, shoot, I've already forgotten the phrase. It serves the public interest, I think is what I said earlier.
Right.
Obviously, preserving trees serve a
Preserving a
public interest.
canopy for the entire community is, so maybe there's some sort of an incentive that legally can be done, right?
And just because, those are I looked at Webster's. Webster's a little bit more onerous, so that's why I didn't pull that one. But we can keep looking for other examples. They're out there, and so even if there's different things like the incentives, I can try to find some examples and bring them back. We can definitely, if there's other things you want us to look for, I can talk a little bit more about a tree and merit program, kind of bring these things, at least those 2, back in the next meeting as well.
Maybe like free leaf pickup. Get it into the street, man. All right, anything else for Eric?
All right,
All
I'll
right,
bring
thanks,
some barn
Eric.
things back.
All right, up next, we have vegetation in the right-of-way. We are all over the place tonight.
Remember back in our August meeting, as part of our code discussion, we discussed that we don't have a current regulation requiring the maintenance of the vegetation within the lawn area between the sidewalk and the street. We referenced 3 other sections of the code, but we wanted more stronger language. So at that time, you seemed amenable to bringing this forward, so we are proposing new language for you here. It would fall under the property maintenance code, and the underlying section within the area is what would be added, so.
I'll make a motion that we approve the changes to Chapter 500 Chapter 500, Section 830 as underlined, and send it to the full Board of Aldermen for consideration.
Second?
All right, any discussion, comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Awesome. All right, we'll move into our second citizen comment. Anyone in the audience would like to address the board? Okay. And seeing no new business before the board, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.